Nobody wants you around!
Please, Ma. Please, Ma.
The winter after his father died did not ask permission. It arrived hard and early, pressing cold through walls and bones. The boy was 16. He still kept his father's tools organized in the garage, waiting for weekend projects that would never come. On the third night alone in that house, his stepmother stood in the doorway and blocked the light. She spoke softly at first, said grief makes people do things they regret, said the house felt too empty, said he was becoming a man now, said she noticed. She moved closer. He backed against the wall and felt his stomach turn. He said no. It came out firm and clear. By morning, the story had changed. She told neighbors he attacked her. She said he threatened her. She said he put his hands on her and she feared for her life. She told it fast and loud, voice shaking with manufactured tears. People believed the first voice they heard. At the hardware store, men crossed to the other side of the aisle when he entered. A mother at the grocery pulled her children behind her and watched him until he left. A clerk muttered that boys like that always showed their true colors, eventually. No one asked him anything. No one looked him in the eye. That night, the temperature dropped to -20. The stepmother called the locks changed and left his things on the porch. He stood in the driveway, counting his breaths. Each one burned white in the frozen air. He carried $5 in his pocket, his father's last birthday gift, and nothing else. He walked until the town thinned and the rail yard appeared, silent and iced over. An abandoned train car sat on a dead track, rusted and half buried in snow. The lot owner wanted it gone. $5 was enough. He stepped inside, and the cold followed him. Metal groaned. Frost covered every surface. He closed the door and leaned his back against it, sliding down until he sat on the frozen floor. For the first time since his father died, his hands shook, not from cold, but from the weight of what had been taken from him. Then he clenched his fists, stood up, and started planning how to survive the night. He would not freeze. He would not beg. And he would prove, with his own 2 hands, exactly who he was. The first morning, he woke before light with frost coating the inside of the rail car. His breath rose white and visible. His joints ached from sleeping on metal, stiff from cold that pressed through every layer he owned. He checked the cracks he had stuffed the night before. Some held, others did not. And he fixed what he could and stepped outside into the dark. He walked the edges of town looking for work no one posted. He knocked on back doors of warehouses. He offered to haul demolition waste, clear construction debris, scrub floors after closing. Some doors opened just wide enough for a headshake. Others stayed shut entirely. The jobs he got were the ones no one else wanted: late-night cleanup at building sites, lifting materials too heavy for one person, breaking concrete in unheated spaces. They would not hire him for anything near schools, nothing around families. When a grocery needed overnight stock work, the manager looked at him once and said the position had just been filled. But the demolition crews took his labor. They paid in cash, left in envelopes on workbenches without meeting his eyes. Take it and go. The work destroyed his body, lifting rebar until his shoulders burned, carrying loads of broken tile and shattered drywall, swinging sledgehammers against walls that seemed to resist on purpose. His muscles screamed, his back locked up. He kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking led nowhere useful. Hunger became his constant companion. It twisted his stomach into knots and made his hands shake by midday. He learned to ignore it, to push through the weakness and dizziness. At the market, he bought the cheapest bread, the bruised fruit no one else wanted. Mothers pulled their children closer when he walked past. Men watched him with hard eyes, hands ready, as if violence might erupt at any moment. The whispers followed him everywhere. Violent, unstable. What did you expect from a boy like that? No one said his stepmother's name. When people mentioned her at all, it was with sympathy. That poor woman who had to protect herself. That brave woman living alone now. He kept his head down. He spoke only when necessary. Yes, no, I can do that. Words felt dangerous. Silence felt safer. His hands cracked from the work and the cold. His knuckles split open and bled onto whatever he touched. He wrapped them in strips torn from old shirts and kept working. The pain was proof he was still alive, still moving forward. Each night, he returned to the railcar as the sun disappeared. He counted the coins he had earned. Some days it was enough for food. Other days it was not. He ate sparingly, chewing slowly to make it last, to convince his body it was more than it was. He fell asleep sitting up when the floor felt too cold to lie on. He dreamed of his father sometimes, teaching him to use a level, showing him how to measure twice and cut once. He woke alone with frost on his eyelashes and the knowledge that today would be exactly like yesterday. He would wake before dawn. He would search for work. He would endure the whispers. He would survive, because survival was all he had left, and no one could take that from him. He noticed the boy on his third week in the rail car, small shape behind a dumpster near the tracks, curled tight against the wind. The boy's eyes followed him with the wariness of something hunted. He recognized that look. Abandoned, hungry, alone. He did not approach. He knew what a teenage boy looked like to someone that vulnerable, like danger, like threat, like something to run from. 2 days later, there were 2 more. Younger, skittish, hovering at the edge of the rail yard after dark. They scattered when he walked past, disappearing into shadows between the forgotten cars. That night, he left bread on a crate outside his door. He went inside and waited. Through the gap in the doorframe, he watched them emerge. They grabbed the food and vanished. He did it again the next night, and the next. Work became scarcer as winter deepened. The construction sites slowed. The cleanup jobs dried up. He went entire days without finding labor. His own meals became smaller, then skipped entirely. But when he had food, he left some outside. He told himself it was practical. They were smaller. They needed it more. He began noticing the pattern. These boys had nowhere to go. No one teaching them how to layer clothes, where to find warm places, how to make a dollar stretch. They were surviving on instinct alone, and instinct was not enough when the temperature dropped below 0. The blizzard hit without warning on a Tuesday night. One moment the air was still and frozen. The next, wind tore through the rail yard like something alive and furious. Snow turned the world white and erased all distance. He heard the shouting over the wind. Children's voices, high and panicked. He grabbed his coat and pushed into the storm. He found them 50 yards from the rail car. 3 children, 2 boys and a small girl, lost in the whiteout. Their lips were blue. Their movements were slow and confused. Hypothermia had already started shutting them down. He stopped. His hands hovered in the air between them. If he touched them, if he carried them, if someone saw, would anyone believe he was helping? No, or would this be the final proof they needed that he was exactly what they said he was? The smallest boy collapsed into the snow. The decision made itself. He scooped the boy up, grabbed the girl's hand, and pulled the other boy close against his side. He moved through the blinding snow, counting steps, using the rail car's dark shape as a beacon. He fell once, went down hard on his knees, and forced himself back up. He got them inside. He carried the smallest child against his chest and guided the other 2 through the blinding snow. The wind tore at them from every direction. He fell twice in drifts that came up to his thighs, went down hard both times, but kept the boy's head above the snow. He got up. He kept moving. Inside the rail car, he laid them on the floor and started a small fire in his makeshift stove. His hands shook as he worked. The children were not responding. Their skin felt like ice. He removed their wet clothes. His mind screamed warnings with every layer he peeled away. This could destroy him. If anyone saw this, if anyone misunderstood, it would not matter that they were dying. It would only matter what it looked like. He pushed the thoughts away and worked faster. He wrapped them in every blanket he owned, leaving nothing for himself. He treated their injuries with supplies he had taken from construction sites, bandages for scraped knees, ointment for the girl's cut hand. He checked their breathing, counted their heartbeats, watched their color slowly return from blue to pale pink. He stayed awake all night. He fed the fire. He monitored their breathing. Every 30 minutes, he checked their pulses. He kept the door propped open despite the cold pouring in. Let anyone look. Let them see there was nothing hidden here. Dawn broke gray and brutal. He heard voices outside calling names, desperate and raw. He stood and stepped through the open door into the freezing morning. He kept his hands visible, palms out, posture non-threatening. The parents came running across the rail yard, frantic from searching all night. 3 sets of parents, faces hollow with fear. "They're safe," he said. "Inside. Warm." They rushed past him without hesitation. The mother reached her daughter first and made a sound that was not quite a cry, not quite a gasp. The father stopped in the doorway and stared at the interior of the railcar. Cold metal walls, minimal possessions. A single blanket left in the corner that the boy had not given away because there were no more to give. Evidence of one person barely surviving who had shared everything. The mother wept. The father's hands shook as he lifted his daughter, still wrapped in a stranger's blanket. He looked at the boy. Really looked this time. This was the same man who had told him to stay away from his family 2 weeks ago. The same man who had crossed the street to avoid him. "You saved them," the father said. The boy said nothing. He nodded once. "Why?" the father asked. His voice broke on the word. The boy looked at the children, at the parents holding them, at the rail car that had become his entire world. Because nobody else would. The parents insisted on helping repair the rail car door. The father returned that afternoon with proper tools, a level, a drill, screws that did not bend. He was a construction worker. His hands knew the work. They worked side by side in silence, measuring, adjusting, securing. Respect communicated through shared labor, not words. When the door hung straight and closed tight, the father nodded once and packed his tools. The mother brought hot food that evening. Soup that steamed in the cold air, bread that was still warm. It was the first real meal he had eaten in weeks. He ate slowly, forcing himself not to rush, not to show how desperately his body needed it. They asked his name. They asked his story. He told it simply, without emotion or accusation. The stepmother's proposition, his refusal, the lies that followed, the door that locked behind him. He did not ask them to believe him. He only stated what had happened. They listened differently now. They had seen the evidence. They had seen what kind of person shares their last blanket with dying children. The next morning, he found a bag of warm clothes outside the rail car. No note, just a winter coat, thermal shirts, wool socks, all clean, all his size. The day after, the father appeared at dawn. He had steady construction work available if the boy wanted it, legitimate hours, fair pay. He wanted it. At the market, the woman who had pulled her daughter away from him weeks ago now packed extra food into his bag. She met his eyes. She nodded. No words, just acknowledgement. Men started arriving one at a time after their shifts ended. They came quietly, without announcement. They brought wood scraps from job sites, tools they were not using, nails and brackets and materials that would otherwise go to waste. No apologies for before. Just help now. An older man with weathered hands appeared one evening. Retired carpenter, he said, heard the boy could use guidance with that stove. He taught him proper metalwork, how to weld seams that would hold, how to create ventilation that would not kill him with smoke. The workshop culture emerged naturally. Communication happened through craft. Respect came through competence. The older man showed him a technique. The boy practiced until he got it right. The father brought scrap lumber and they built shelves together. Another man taught him electrical basics, how to wire a light safely, how not to burn the place down. They worked in the evenings after their own jobs ended. They taught him skills his father would have taught him if his father had lived. They did not talk about the stepmother or the lies or the injustice. They talked about measurements and tolerances and the right way to join two pieces of wood so they would not separate. The railcar began to transform. Insulation appeared in the walls. The stove vented properly. Storage took shape. It became less like a metal coffin and more like a space where a person could actually survive winter. The railcar transformed over the following weeks. Proper insulation lined the walls. A functioning workshop area took shape in the back half. Tool storage organized along one side, hammers, saws, measuring tape, all in their places. He posted rules on the wall in clear block letters. No theft, no violence, earn your keep, respect the space. The homeless boys started showing up after dark, testing boundaries. They expected charity or pity or some adult trying to save them. They got none of those things. He assigned tasks immediately. You want to eat? Sand this wood. You want to stay warm? Help insulate that wall. He handed them tools and showed them once how to do it right. Then he let them work. The boys responded to structure. They responded to clear expectations. They responded to being treated like men instead of charity cases or problems to be managed. When they did the work, they ate. When they did not, they left. Simple. He taught them basic carpentry, how to measure accurately, how to cut straight, how to join two pieces so they held under pressure. He taught them metalwork, how to file edges smooth, how to recognize when something was square. He taught them how to build things that lasted. A woman started watching from a distance. He recognized her, the teacher who had pulled her purse tighter when he walked past her at the market months ago. She came back several evenings in a row, observing. She saw angry boys becoming focused. She saw patience being learned through craft. She approached cautiously one evening after the boys had left. She asked if she could document what was happening here, write about it. He was wary. Just write what you see, no embellishment. The article ran in the local paper a week later. It did not praise. It did not make him a hero. It described boys learning trades, a teenage boy teaching with quiet authority, photographs of finished projects, shelves that hung level, repaired tools, evidence of craftsmanship. The writer let the work speak for itself. The community response shifted. People who had been certain of his guilt now said, "Maybe we got it wrong." The gossip changed tone. "Those boys listened to him," someone said at the hardware store. "Hasn't been one fight since they started going there." Another voice, "They're learning real skills. My nephew showed me a table he built. Solid work." More boys came. Some stayed, some did not. The ones who stayed learned that work had dignity, that finishing something you started mattered, that your hands could build instead of destroy. He taught them the way the older men had taught him, through demonstration, through correction, through the simple fact that if you wanted to be here, you contributed. No one rode for free. The workshop grew because it demanded something from everyone who entered, and the boys, forgotten and written off, rose to meet that demand. An older man arrived one afternoon in early spring, and a weathered face, observant eyes that took in everything without judgment. He stood at the edge of the workspace and watched in silence. "Heard about what you're doing," he said finally. "Reminds me of my boy. Could have used a place like this." The boy kept working, guiding a younger kid through proper hammer technique. Correction without criticism. Show, demonstrate, let them feel the difference between right and wrong. "Former construction company owner," the old man continued. "Lost my son to the streets, then to drugs, then to everything else that follows. He paused. "What would you build if you had proper resources?" The boy set down his tools. He walked the old man through the space, explained the vision. A real workshop. Teach them trades that lead to actual jobs. Skills that last longer than handouts. He pointed to the makeshift welding area, the cramped woodworking station. Carpentry, welding, basic electrical, maybe automotive if we had the space. Give them something to build besides rap sheets. The old man nodded slowly. "I'll provide materials. This isn't charity, it's investment. You teach them right, they'll build this town someday." Trucks started arriving the following week. Lumber, proper tools, welding equipment, safety gear. No ceremonies, no press coverage. Just work. Men from construction sites volunteered weekend hours. They brought expertise the boy did not have yet. They expanded the workshop, proper ventilation systems, designated work areas separated by function, a tool accountability system where every item had a place and a checkout sheet. The boys learned responsibility through equipment maintenance. You wanted to use the welder? First, you showed you could clean it, store it properly, respect what it could do. You wanted the power tools? Prove you understood safety protocols. The structure deepened organically. Morning assignments posted on a board, skill rotation so everyone learned multiple trades, project completion requirements. You did not start something new until you finished what you had begun. The first boy got hired at a local metalworking shop 3 months in. The owner had seen a custom bracket the kid fabricated, asked who taught him that. The boy had worked at the rail yard workshop for 5 months. He knew how to show up on time, follow instructions, and produce clean work. He came back the next weekend to help teach the others. Someone gave me a shot," he said, "passing it on." That became the pattern. Boys learned, boys left for real jobs, boys returned to teach. The cycle built on itself. The workshop was no longer just a shelter from the cold. It was a pipeline, a way out. A place where hands that had nothing to offer the world learned they could build anything. The article circulated beyond town. Regional papers picked it up. A vocational school 2 counties over reached out about partnership opportunities. Television stations called asking for interviews. The workshop had become something people noticed. His stepmother heard. She felt control slipping. The narrative she had built, the dangerous boy, the woman who had no choice, began cracking under the weight of what he had actually done with his life. She started a new rumor campaign. No whispered to anyone who would listen. "He's grooming those boys. Why do men always believe other men? Look at the pattern." Tension rose immediately. Some families pulled their sons from the workshop. Mothers who had started to trust now questioned everything. An anonymous complaint was filed with child services. He did not panic. When the investigator called, he opened all records, every ledger, every parent permission slip, every photograph documenting progress. "Come see for yourself," he said. The investigator arrived skeptical. A young man working with vulnerable boys. It fit a profile she had seen before, but what she found did not match her expectations. Detailed ledgers showing hours worked, skills taught, materials used and accounted for. Parent permission slips for every boy under 18. In photographs documenting projects from start to finish, boys' faces focused and proud. She interviewed the boys separately. They all told consistent stories. Structure, learning, respect. No one had a bad word to say. When she asked leading questions, they looked confused. "He just teaches us stuff," one boy said. "Nobody ever did that before." The town called a meeting to address the concerns. The community center filled beyond capacity. His stepmother attended, positioning herself in the front row. She performed victimhood perfectly, dabbing her eyes, voice trembling when she spoke of living in fear. He stood at the front and said nothing in his own defense. Instead, he presented the boys themselves. They demonstrated their skills, welding clean seams, carpentry joints that held under pressure, electrical wiring done to code. One of the children he had rescued during the blizzard, now 13, stood up. "He saved my life that night. Then he taught me how to save my own. That's what he does here." The father who had told him to stay away from his family stood next. His voice shook. "I called him dangerous. I was wrong. My daughter is alive because of him. These boys have futures because of him." The investigator presented her findings. 0 evidence of misconduct. Substantial evidence of mentorship and skill development. The program meets or exceeds all standards for youth vocational training. Then someone asked his stepmother to clarify her timeline. When exactly had these incidents occurred? The dates did not line up with the workshop schedule. Boys accounted for his time. The lies began unraveling in real time. Other men stood, quietly, reluctantly. They came forward. She had made advances. They had stayed silent, uncomfortable, unsure if anyone would believe them. Her pattern of manipulation became visible to everyone. She left the meeting early, defeated, unable to maintain the performance. The vote passed overwhelmingly. Official town support for the workshop, liability protection, zoning approval for expansion. An older man stood in the back. "We failed this kid. We believed lies because we were afraid. We didn't ask questions because it was easier not to. That's on us." He looked directly at the boy. "We're sorry, and we're grateful you didn't become what we accused you of being." The zoning board made it official 2 weeks later. The space was designated a Youth Skills Development Center, legal, legitimate, permanent. His stepmother left town quietly. No confrontation, no final scene. One day her house had curtains in the windows. The next day it did not. She was simply gone. The house sat empty for a month, then a for sale sign appeared. Someone bought it eventually. Life moved on as if she had never been there at all. The night after the designation became official, he stood alone in the center of the workshop. The boys had gone home. The tools hung organized on the walls, each in its place. Projects sat in various stages of completion on the workbenches. The schedule board showed names and assignments for the week ahead. He looked at his hands, scarred from work, calloused and strong. His back had grown broader from labor. The boy who had been thrown out into the cold had become someone else through necessity and choice. He smiled, small and private, the first real smile since his father died. The realization settled over him quietly. He had not planned to be believed. He had planned to prove it, and work leaves evidence that words never could. His father's final $5 had bought more than shelter. It had bought the foundation for all of this, the workshop, the boys learning trades, the future being built one project at a time. His father had given him survival money. He had turned it into legacy. A train horn sounded in the distance, the same sound that had marked his lowest night when he sat on a frozen floor, certain he might not survive until morning, the same sound that had become the soundtrack to his grinding daily existence, to hunger and cold and the weight of false accusations. Now it marked something different, permanence, purpose, impact that would outlast him. He walked to the original railcar, I kept as a reminder at the edge of the property. He stepped inside and sat where he had spent that first frozen night. The space felt smaller now, or maybe he had grown larger. He ran his hand along the metal wall, feeling the cold still embedded there. He remembered the terror, the certainty that he would freeze or starve or simply disappear into the winter like he had never existed. He closed his eyes and whispered to the silence, to the memory of his father, to whatever force had kept him alive through those impossible weeks. "I made it, Dad. Different than we planned, but I made it." He sat there for a long time, letting the past and present exist in the same space. The boy who had been discarded and the man who had built something that mattered. The lies that had tried to erase him and the truth that had emerged through sustained action. Eventually he stood, locked the old railcar, and walked back to the workshop. Tomorrow boys would arrive expecting to learn. He would teach them. The cycle would continue. The cold had failed, the accusations had failed, and everything his father had taught him about building things that last had proven true in ways neither of them could have imagined. Spring transformed the rail yard. Grass grew around the workshop, green and insistent. The space no longer looked forgotten. Fresh paint covered the rust. Proper signage was installed. Rail yard workshop, skills for life. Boys arrived each day with purpose. Some learned welding, sparks flying as they practiced clean seams. Others worked carpentry, measuring twice and cutting once. The youngest did basic tool maintenance, learning that caring for equipment was part of the craft. He taught patiently, he corrected technique, explained why it mattered, demonstrated again when they did not understand the first time. Teaching was its own skill, and he was still learning it. The town treated him differently now. Nods of respect when he walked to the hardware store. Morning. Greetings instead of silence. People asked for his advice on projects, on how to help troubled kids, on what the community could do better. Men started asking if their sons could apprentice. He vetted each one carefully. Not everyone got in. This was not daycare. You had to earn your place through showing up and doing the work. One morning, he found his father's old work jacket hanging by the workshop door. Canvas worn soft from years of use, but cleaned and repaired. A note was pinned to the chest. Found this in storage. Thought you should have it. The Thompsons. He ran his fingers over the fabric. His father's name was still stitched inside the collar in faded thread. He put it on. It fit perfectly now, where it would have swallowed him 2 years ago. He wore it while teaching, feeling connected to a lineage of builders, his father, the men who had taught him, and now these boys learning the same lessons. The workshop expanded into a second railcar. Classroom space for basic literacy tutoring and GED preparation. Skills with your hands meant nothing if you could not read blueprints or do job site math. The partnership with the vocational school solidified. The workshop became an official training site. The first graduating class earned their certifications. 5 boys. The 3 hired immediately. They did not leave. They returned as assistant instructors, teaching the next wave. New boys kept arriving, angry, scared, written off by everyone else. He met them at the door and saw himself in their defiance, in the way they expected nothing and trusted no one. He handed them safety goggles and gloves. You want to stay angry? That's your choice. But while you're here, you build something. He showed them the empty project board where completed work was displayed with the builder's name. Your name goes up there when you finish. Nobody can take that from you. He watched them transform the same way he had, through the dignity of craft, through finishing something they started, through the evidence that their hands could create instead of destroy. Every evening, he locked the workshop and looked back through the windows at boys cleaning up inside, putting tools away properly, sweeping sawdust, taking pride in the space. He smiled, knowing tomorrow would be full again. He walked past the spot where he had almost frozen that first night. The spot where they said he would end up dead or in prison, where his life was supposed to end in tragedy and proof of their judgment. They said he was dangerous. They were right, just not the way they meant. He was dangerous to their lies, dangerous to their excuses, dangerous to the idea that accusations defined reality. With $5, frozen hands, and his father's memory, he had built something that proved what he was made of. The cold had failed. The accusations had failed. And every boy who walked through that door learned the same truth. You are not what they say you are. You are what you build.